Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast, The Wire Remix, Season 1, Episode 6, The Wire. So the title, the name of the episode is the name of the show. I think that's probably the only time I've seen a show do that. Have a title of an episode using the same name as the show itself. As always, I'm here joined with Robert Sapp. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining me, sir.
How you doing?
We continue to break down Season 1 of The Wire. This episode, again, of course, was called The Wire, directed by Ed Bianchi, if I'm pronouncing that right. This episode was ranked 30th on Vulture's all-time Wire episode. So up until this point, this would be the highest ranked episode that we've done so far. And the epigraph, of course, is "And all the pieces matter." Lester Freeman. Very potent epigraph. Without question, we'll talk about that. This episode begins, of course, with the body of Omar's boyfriend, Brandon, being found by Wallace and Poop. Wallace, before he finds the body, Wallace wakes up to an alarm clock, and we get get to know Wallace even that much more. He is in a row house with Poop and a bunch of about 5 or 6 younger boys who, anywhere from the ages of, I would say, anywhere from 8 to 10, younger than him. He's kind of like amazingly, they're a fatherly figure to them from a standpoint of he's giving them chips with their book bag. He reminds them that if they don't go to school, social services will come around asking. He sends them off, and then he and Pooh, of course, see that the police have found the body of Brandon, which is stretched out on a car, bloody, with one eye gouged out, a bunch of cuts, and just a torture session by the Barksdales. Of course, that's what Avon wanted to send that message to the courtyards about stealing from them, and the message was sent to one Wallace, who is completely shook by this. He stands by Poop. Poop says, "Hey, that's him, the boy that we, Omar's boy." And then Wallace didn't say anything. Yeah, his mouth is wide open. His eyes are just, fixated on that image of seeing a guy hanging on the car, not hanging on the car, but laying flat on the car with one eye seemingly looking at him. What were your thoughts to this opening scene? A little bit more in depth on who Wallace is with this scene.
Yeah, this is one of the meteor opening scenes of the entire series, I would argue. The easier part for me is when it switches to Brandon having been killed and tortured on the car. Like, all of that is for a reason, plot wise. All that's for a reason within the story. The reason why I appreciate The Wire in this show and why it's a treat to watch it every week, and every time that I do these weekly reviews, I watch it every week, and why I've watched it so many times is for the first part of that opening. It would be so easy for a show like this to demonize its characters. It would be so easy to do that. And a variety of different ways they don't do that all the time. But in this particular instance, it shows us the why. Why is Wallace hanging out on those corners? Why are these kids going to be doing what they're doing? And it shows you the circumstances that people are in, and no one is actually out here doing this for the fun of it and for the thrill of life. So anyways, that first part, when I watched it again, I was just like, yeah, this is why I love this show. This is why this show is for real the truth. Because it doesn't shy away from all aspects of its subject matter. And the fact that people are born into abject poverty, because that's what they were showing, abject poverty. Like they're wiring electricity into that house just to have heat. Everybody's spread out in different places, bags of chips or lunch, breakfast, and dinner, versus, or add on whatever they can get to school. And then if you don't have a bag of chips, then that's just real. And like you said, Wallace is the father figure. That should say it all. That should say it all. And it does say it all. And so anyway, so again, that's why this opening is one of the best to me. But besides that, the kind of like the Brandon being laid out there and Wallace's direct reaction to that is actually the normal reaction. Like that's how anybody in a normal circumstance would react to seeing horror like that. It would haunt you. It would haunt you. And again, that kind of shows like the environment that these characters are being brought up in, right? That for the most part, everybody in that scene just acts as if this is normal. And it absolutely isn't normal or shouldn't be normal. And Wallace acts accordingly. So they're kind of like shining a light on how bizarre this world is. But when you tie it again with the epigraph, that all the pieces matter. The reaction of the Barksdale's crew is what is going to be ultimately their undoing, and you can start to see that in this episode, and particularly in the beginning of it, because they reacted in this way. It sets Wallace off. It puts resolve around Daniels, and it sets Omar off. So yeah, this was an opening. This was an opening. It did a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this was an opening that, to your point, was beyond plot points, because we are both educators. We deal with kids every day. And these, unfortunately, are some of the realities of some of the children that we deal with, unfortunately. And you see a Wallace having basically to raise a kid, to raise other kids when he's a kid. And you see, like, before these kids, even get to school, they've already been through hell. Like you said, those are shitty living conditions, on top of each other. Basically, it's like, basically 8 people. I didn't include even Poop's little girlfriend, Wallace, probably like 8 or 9 people in one little row house room, what have you. So it goes like, it was a tough watch. And it was a tough watch, and I've seen this episode, countless times, and I was like, ooh. I was like, yeah, it was definitely difficult to watch, considering that you have this kid raising kids, and I'm like, no, this is not going to work out for these kids. I mean, I already know, with Wallace, we already know. We can leave that till later, but I'm just talking about these kids who are being raised by Wallace. Like, what does their future look like? So very difficult scene, powerful scene, to your point, a very difficult scene to watch, especially to open the show. But again, that's the Wire is a unfiltered, unapologetic show, and raw to its core. So you have that. You have that. Then we move on to McNulty and Rawls, and Landsman. Landsman is also in the office. McNulty McNulty basically didn't say anything during the course of the scene. It's mostly Rawls telling McNulty look, I know you're on this case, but we want you back here. I demand that you come back here and fuck this bar sale case. I don't care about that. So you have Landsman there basically playing the Landsman, kissing Rawls' ass and playing the good soldier from that standpoint, playing his part. And McNulty basically has no, he's thinking, he really didn't have too much to say in that scene. It was all dominated by Rawls's, dictatorship. Like, hey, you're coming back. If you want to come back, basically, I'm doing you a favor by allowing you to come back from this little shit case that you've been doing. So that's the Rawls mentality. Like, this is a favor to you. What word did he use? I'm a reasonable guy. Yeah, that's what he was saying. And McNulty's
Very reasonable.
Reasonable, yeah, very reasonable, sir, as Lance would say continuously. And McNulty, he asked McNulty if basically if you don't acquiesce, that can lead a reasonable guy to being unreasonable. That was McNulty's retort at the end of the scene. So you had a lot on this. What were your thoughts on McNulty in this particular scene?
Yeah. My main thing is I was gonna say slow down. I'm not on McNulty's side at all, or his perspective at all. Let's pause for a second. Those are his bosses. It actually doesn't matter how you feel about something. Those are the people who are your boss. It's just that simple. And so the righteous indignation attitude of McNulty, we know what that is and how it presents itself over the series. But in this particular episode, in this particular moment, it really irked me. And the reason that it irked me was McNulty brought the files in. Now, I think I know why. As I was watching the episode, I was just really irked when that, and I always get irked at this point. I actually came to a different conclusion watching it this time that allowed me not to be as annoyed as I probably sound like right now, and usually am when I watch this. I'm always annoyed by it because he brings the files in. The first thing he says is, "Look, Rawls, Lieutenant, I think we can clear a couple of blah, blah, blah." And then Rawls says, "I don't care about your cases. Now we're going to go in." So I know we haven't gone back into that. That's why I just want to keep in mind as we go through this episode. Remember, he's the one that brought the files in to Rawls and said to him, "I have these cases for you." And then his reaction to everybody else is, "You're the assholes."
Right.
And that drives me crazy.
Right.
That drives me crazy because that's not a rational human being acting in that moment. That's an irrational child acting in that moment, wanting to blame everybody else for their mistakes. And that will set me off as a person and then as a viewer to watching that character flaw. Now, it's great that I have that reaction. I don't think it's by accident that the writers and the creators and the actor chose different ways in which to do the scene. I think they want one of those reactions from an audience member to be my reaction. Absolutely. So it in no way takes away, of course, from the brilliance of the show because they're invoking a very significant emotional reaction for me. But I'm not going to also sit and laud McNulty for his staunch defense of his case. Like, no, you did that. You created that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, the easy narrative to paint on this particular scene would be like, Rawls is a bully, he's an asshole, so on and so on. But the bottom line is Rawls is in his position for a reason, by playing ball, by being a politician, by looking out for his best interest and the best interest of his unit. He's doing his job.
Exactly. Which is what a boss should do.
Which is right, yes. Which is what all our bosses do.
He's doing his job. Yes. How dare he?
So Rawls is not the asshole here. That's what we're basically trying to say to the audience.
I mean, it's not that Rawls isn't an asshole
No, in
as
this
a
scene, I'm saying
person,
in this scene, he's not the asshole.
but just because you don't like what somebody's doing doesn't make them, by definition, an asshole.
Right.
And that's how I perceive McNulty reacting. It's that he doesn't like what Rawls is doing. Yeah.
So we go through the detail, listening to the calls on the payphone, on the one payphone in the pit. You have now this was a quick scene. They're listening to the one payphone to listen to the calls from the one payphone that's in the pit, and they realize basically that we need to be on more payphones. That this is not enough. Quick scene. What were your thoughts?
All the pieces matter. All the pieces matter. I mean, like this is the epic. There are no quick. I mean, like yes, it was a quick scene in time, but there's no way. I mean, The Wire doesn't waste scenes anyway, and there are no wasted scenes in this episode. It goes exact. I might be jumping ahead, but right now I can't. I'm so annoyed at McNulty. I can't keep my thoughts straight a little bit. But this goes exactly together with the scene that Freeman has with Presbeluski later on, when Presbeluski marks a thing not pertinent. And he's like, no, the information that we're getting, whether it is obvious or not obvious, all is a part of the case. And what they're doing right now is they're setting up and showing the audience the rules of a wire. Like, we didn't all know this. We've seen this so many times. We think like, yeah. But when this first happened, when this show was first coming out, we didn't know these rules. The audience didn't know these rules. Like I said, this was such a groundbreaking show, or anybody says, such a groundbreaking show because it broke away from the police procedural and dived into something like this. So the reason why this episode, in my humble opinion, is called here is because it's introducing something that is fresh and brand new to an audience. The audience, we didn't know what a wire was per se. And we definitely didn't understand all the legal ramifications of everything that needs to be done in a wire, in a wiretap. And so this scene, although short, is very, very meaningful because as this episode does, it sets up the rules of this world. It sets up the rules of how and why you need to do certain things with a wire, or in order to have a wire and in order to maintain a wiretap.
So you have McNulty in the crime scene. He finally makes his way to the crime scene. He sees the burn marks. He sees how tortured Brandon was. Again, you had broken fingers, burn marks, one eye gouged out. He spread out on the car. And McNulty recognizes that this is a clear message by Avon to Omar, to anybody else who even thinks about robbing him. And what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. McNulty also recognizes the message it's going to speak to Omar, right? Like, he recognizes that it's a message to the pride, like why they laid him out here. But he also knows that this is going to be the thing that he can hook Omar with. Like, he wasn't going to get Omar with a gun charge. He wasn't going to get Omar with a humble. He wasn't going to be able to flip Omar and everything. So the way that he could actually get Omar to have a conversation with him and to potentially give him information that he knows was to let him know about this murder of his boy as soon as possible. And so again, all the pieces matter. All the pieces matter.
So go ahead.
And so Omar would not be directly tied to their case, but McNulty knows by having Omar involved, he can get more information / put more pressure on Barksdale crew.
Yeah, I mean, McNulty's using this. He's using this as a means to where he knows he's going to be able to push the case. So it, to your point earlier, it benefited him greatly the way the Barksdales did kill this dude. the way they torture him. So it was a benefit towards McNulty for not only for them to kill the dude, but to just outright just torture him. And McNulty's words, you know, they must have killed this kid 3 or 4 times. You have D'Angelo and Wallace back at the pit. Wallace clearly shaken up by the killing. D'Angelo, of course, basically trying to tell him, you know, get over it, not get over it, but, you know, let it go. Basically telling Wallace, what did you think they were going to do when we made that call? He's now, keep in mind that they're being watched by Carver on the rooftop. So Carver watches him and relays a message back to the detail. You have during that same scene, you have D'Angelo being called by Stringer on the payphone, and one of the Barksdale soldiers slips up and uses Stringer's name on the payphone. Then you have Stringer asking to get Bodie out. Then of course D'Angelo goes back to Wallace and lets him know that Bodie is coming home. A lot going on in this particular scene. There were a lot of facets of this scene. It wasn't even that long of a scene. Go ahead.
Was it Bodie who slipped up and said Stringer's name?
No, Bodie. That was later in the episode.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay.
This was somebody. Whoever slipped up and said Stringer's name was somebody that we didn't know.
Yeah. Sorry. So, I mean, like, again, all the pieces matter. This goes right into everything that we're talking about in terms of setting up the rules of the universe, particularly setting up the rules of a wiretap and what it means and what they have to do. And so the big thing here is they're being able to identify all the major players that they never would be able to identify under norm or would be very, very hard to identify under normal circumstances.
Yeah, it's starting to show some cracks too in the Barstool organization as far as, again.
Well, they don't know that they're wired. They just don't. Nobody knows about this.
No,
There's
nobody.
No cracks. I mean, like, the cracks, I guess, but these are young boys. Like the rules are there for a reason. So I get exactly what you're saying. But nobody's also anticipating this.
No, nobody. No, they don't know about the wire yet. You have Bodie and Levy in the court. Levy, of course, gets Bodie out. The judge questions how could Bodie have this type of representation. Of course, we know Levy works for works for the Barksdales. Stringer, we didn't mention this in the last scene. Stringer identifying that Bodie is somebody worth getting out of jail. I thought that was notable. Something to take heed about. Because you would think that Bodie at this point in his life, or at this point, is barely above, not even barely a soldier. I mean, he's a youngin in the pit. He's not even on Weebay's level as far as being recognized by the Barksdales. But clearly Stringer has been notices him and they recognize him, which doesn't speak well for D'Angelo. The fact that Bodie is getting that type of attention from Stringer. Bodie gets out. Levy gets Bodie out. What were your thoughts on this court scene in terms of how in terms of Levy and how they navigated that?
Yeah. This was tricky for me not to think about later seasons. So I feel like Levy, I mean, it's another it's another aspect of the process that Simon and the producers are laying out, and the actors and everybody that's involved in shows and scene like this. Like, it's the absolute hypocrisy of the legal system and how this show views the legal system. You on one end you have Levy and his clerk slash co-lawyer. That's probably not the right way to say it, but whatever. Right there, and they're organizing everything. And then you look on the other side, and it's one public defender who's overwhelmed by paperwork and has a laundry list of clients to go through. Right. So it's a statement on, like, if you have the means, then you can provide yourself with a really good defense. And then it's very much overkill in a juvenile, in a juvie case or whatever, at least to that judge's perspective, and that the way that the courts hold. And so part of this business, the drug business, is being able to have appropriate defense for your clientele, no matter how small they are. Because I would argue both Weebay, please. He's nowhere near Weebay. He like under D'Angelo, like just barely noticeable. He's not noticeable to anybody. But the point being is that you gotta defend your group, because if they start getting picked off, then they can then turn on somebody else, who can turn on somebody else, who can turn blah 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 blah. And that domino. So that part of the Barksdale organization is really, really tight.
Yeah, plus the fact that they deem him worthy to defend. That's why I thought that was important as well. Just Stringer's like, no, this dude, he's, he I mean, it's a discipline to it, of course, but the fact that he identified that that Bodie was worthy of that. It's kind of like he recognized what we would see later on in further seasons, and that definitely was foreshadowing a lot of stuff with D'Angelo, with Bodie, and Stringer. You have Bodie in the pit. He's back. He's on the phone, and this is when he slips up. He uses Stinkum's name. Stinkum reprimands him for it, and Lester hears it, because this is the payphone that of course, they have the wiretap on. Perez Milewski dismisses it as being non-pertinent, and then Lester saying, no, we're building a case here. He shows Perez Milewski the name. He makes a connection with Stinkum, Anton Artzel, and what have you, and the pager number, puts that together, and he says that's when he says the epigraph, and all the pieces matter. Perez, fixes it and marks it as pertinent.
Yeah, I spoke on this earlier. I mean, it's just a great scene. It's a great scene, and it illustrates exactly what the epigraph means. And also, again, as we said, kind of like last week, the show is also a mirror of itself, if that makes any sense, in terms of everything matters in the show. The show is building itself from scratch. It's starting to build. It's already been building, so it's building upon itself right now. And so if you weren't paying attention, pay attention to everything that is going on in the show, because it all matters.
Also, this is important because he being Lester is also teaching Presbyterian on how to build a case, what to see, what to watch. School is in session here. Like you're talking about a 30-year veteran cop versus this, guy who's, on the come up, so to speak, and has finally found something that he's into. So this is valuable, not only valuable information for the case, but also valuable schooling to make Presbyterian that much valuable to the detail and important to the detail. So I thought that was important in terms of that particular scene. You have Bodie, Herc, and Carver. Of course, Herc and Carver are annoyed that Bodie again is out. They bang him on a corner when he's out. He, of course, shows them that he's out legally, and basically they have nothing. They have nothing on him. Bodie, of course, rips the juvenile system. They give him a ride home, and there you go with that. Again, nothing came out of them with Bodie. Like for like the umpteenth time through the first 6 episodes. They're able to just nothing came about it. And he even reprimands them on saying, if you talk to people, and I thought that was the most important part of the scene. He said, if y'all talk to people instead of banging on niggas, you would know something. And I thought that was a very critical line to police work, and also just exposing them that much more on what they are as cops up to this point.
Yeah, the line that cracked me up was when he was like, you know, I don't mean to say anything, but I'm just gonna say the juvenile system in Baltimore is that had me yeah, that was real funny. That was real funny. Yeah, man, Bodie can spit them lines out. He really can.
Yeah, and he knows that they have nothing on him. Like he already knows that. And then, you know, so, and they know that because they give him a ride to his house. They could easily have been like, yo, walk your ass home or whatever. They was like, all right, whatever. Not hurt, but Herc was like, whatever. Carver was, you know, the one that you know, get in the car, numb nuts, and they drive him home to his grandmother's. D'Angelo and Cassandra. So D'Angelo catches Cassandra, who is one of the little hoppers who was on the stash and a part of their crew in the pit. He catches her coming out the grocery store or out the little corner market with groceries. Of course, you gotta go back to the previous episode where Springer tells him to crack down to try to find a snitch in terms of paying them on a Friday. Cassandra's a part of that crew. D'Angelo busts her and recognizes that she wasn't snitching, but she was stealing, and she was stealing vials of drugs and then giving them off. She had a conspiracy with another one part of their crew named Sterling, that they were stealing vials and selling them on the side and making extra money on the side. So he reprimands her, and he just smashes, takes the eggs and throws them out of the bag and what have you. What were your thoughts?
I mean, this is going to connect big time with the scene that him and Wallace have in the pit, right? And so this is showing how D'Angelo would rather handle these things instead of the extreme violence. Like he's the opposite of the rest of them, and how they wanted to handle the situation. We don't know all of his reasoning at this moment, so you're just kind of watching the scene happen. But it really makes sense when we get to that conversation with him and Wallace.
Yeah, no question about it. So now we get back to Bunk, Landsman, and Rawls. Rawls sees the paperwork from the cases that Bunk
that McNulty brought in.
McNulty brought in that he and Bunk found out with the that solved with the going back 2 episodes ago with the old cases and the Crescent murder, and he yells immediately for McNulty, and this, of course, this leads to Rawls wanting a quick arrest, and lump all these cases in, and not giving a shit about, of course, not giving a shit about the Barksdale investigation and their big picture. He figures, hey, I can get these, these are clear case, get some stats, and get my numbers. Again, to your point earlier, McNulty brought this information in his department. So it was not like Rawls was seeking this information out.
Nope.
It was brought to his doorstep. He reacts.
And shoved in his face.
Yes. Without question. So he reacts like any boss would who wants to have a high clearance rate. Hey, I can clear some cases.
Or just anybody would.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
This is, at this point, like I said, like I came to a different resolution than I normally come with this episode, so I'll get to that when we get towards the end. But at this point, I am clearly infuriated with McNulty. Because McNulty knows Rawls. He knows him. And he knows even beyond, that's what I meant, even beyond how a boss would act, he also knows how Rawls will react to this. So if you bring him casework and say, we have the chance to solve some murders, Rawls is going to jump all over that. Even at this early point in the season, and in the series, it's midway point of the season. So this early point in the series, how Rawls is going to react. And so that's kind of like what's always infuriated me. Every time I watch this, I'm like, why would he do that? It didn't make any sense to me. Why would you do this? Again, I think I've actually come to a resolution on that, and I don't like it any better. But anyway, point being, like at this point in time, I am furiously against what McNulty did because it's not smart and it puts the case in jeopardy, and it's his fault.
No question about it. You have D'Angelo, Bodie, Poot, and Wallace. D'Angelo, of course, changes up the system. He demotes Sterling and Cassandra to, I think, lookouts, takes him off the stash, moves Wallace, moves Poot to different positions. And of course, they none of them have any idea on why he did this. We know why he did this, of course, in regards to him catching Cassandra out the market earlier with the extra groceries, knowing that she was stealing, and also using somebody else to help her steal by selling drugs on the side. I think we can save this for the up and coming scene with he and Wallace, because it'll be fully explained from that standpoint. Good bit getting back to the detail. We have Daniels reprimanding Polk for alcohol abuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Polk.
Yeah. Polk for just being an idiot, basically. Or not an idiot. That's hard.
Polk being who he is,
somebody who doesn't care anymore. Doesn't
right.
care.
No. He's it's 9:00 in the morning. He's drunk as a skunk. The detail, Freeman was like, he's already lit up at 9:00, and then McNulty, being the alcoholic that he is, says, or maybe the night before, and then they're basically, looking at him like a joke. He's at the point, Polk, especially since his other guy, the other dude that he came in with, Mahomes, is out of the picture. He just doesn't care anymore. Daniels lets him, Daniels basically says, look, I'm not going to drop you. I want you, you can either go out on these rooftops or dry yourself out. And Daniels basically says, I know that you're an alcoholic. And, Polk leaves the room. And that probably would be the last we see of Polk, I would anticipate, for this season. In that same scene, you also have Prez, and again, it was quick but important. Prez showing Daniels all the paperwork that is coming from this wire. And you could see that, Daniels.
They need a cabinet.
Yeah, they need a cabinet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can basically tell Daniels, in Daniels' mind, he knows that, how deep they're getting. Is reaffirming that, he should continue to push on for this case. Reluctantly, he doesn't want to, but that, that this case is just him showing them all that paperwork. Prez showing them all the paperwork is just showing how big this case is getting. It's getting bigger and bigger without slowing down. So you have Bulk, Kima, McNulty, and Freeman. Bulk basically lets them know that Rawls is going to charge these murders for his stats. They better do something. They better make some moves quickly before he does. McNulty's annoyed, of course. Rawls is an asshole, so on and so on. And what can Jay do? And Bulk says, Landsman can't do anything on this. This is all about Rawls. Kima implores Bulk not Bunk, but forced the entire team, McNulty and Freeman, to go to Daniels. And McNulty, of course, doesn't trust Daniels to fight for this case, to go all the way and to fight for this case. But at this point, Kima basically says, says we have no choice but to go to Daniels, and that's what they end up doing. Go ahead, this because you also annoyed with McNulty from the standpoint.
No, we're not here at the point. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I'm fully ignored with him all throughout this episode, until we get to the end. Then I have a rationalization for how he's acting. That's the best way to put it. Because at this point in time, none of this makes sense to me. And again, like I can't be on his side in terms of I don't trust anybody, because in my head, you did this to yourself. You did this to the unit. So I'm firmly against everything he's saying in this scene, because I'm like, nope, you did this. Nobody else did this. You did this.
Yes, keep this in mind. Freeman and Kima don't know how Rawls got this information. They don't know that McNulty brought that case to him. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, no, McNulty's just being McNulty to them.
Yeah,
he's just doing the same stuff he's always done.
You have Bubbles, Johnny, and another guy scamming some copper off a driver. Johnny talks Bubbles into this scheme that he came up with. They end up getting the copper through this scam where the guy runs Johnny over. He hits him hard enough because he was limping when they were running away. So he did hit him, but it wasn't as hard. It wasn't, of course, lethal. Johnny has this fake can of Campbell soup to make it look like his guts are coming out. While the guy, of course, is consumed with Johnny and trying to attend to him. You see Bubbles and the other guy get the copper and, of course, run away. And they are off on their way. What were your thoughts on this scene?
Yeah, I mean, like it's well, it's sad. It's just a sad scene. I can't view it any other way. Like, it's played for a little bit of laughs, like in terms of like Johnny, has a plan, and goofy Johnny and everything like that. But it's another every time Bubbles, I'm trying to think. Again, yeah, that's why it's sad, because it's just like Bubbles. You want to you root for him. You want him to do better. And so this is a backslide for him. And Johnny's just a tragic figure to me. I can't view him any other way. He's just a tragic figure to me.
Yeah.
Bubbles wants him to realize sometimes how inexperienced he is at this and how he should slow his roll. But again, Bubbles goes right in with it. So yeah, I mean, like I know how part of me is supposed to take the scene as, oh, crackheads are gonna be crackheads, but it's just sad. It just is sad all the way around. And this is another time where it's hard for me to separate what I already know, and the emotional investment I've already given to these characters. And in this instance, it's really, really hard. Every time I see Bubbles backslide, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I have some stuff on Bubbles for a later scene, which I'm gonna save on that. Omar and McNulty. So Omar contacts McNulty. McNulty earlier had left a card on Omar's van and wanted to get contact with him. Omar makes the call, and he tells McNulty that he wants to see the body, wants to see Brandon's body. So we can flush that scene out later too when they meet up.
Wait, no, I actually do
But
have some things to say on this scene.
but
I have some things to say on this thing. Um, so yeah, this is my anti-McNulty episode. But this doesn't have anything to do with the papers. Um, you can't bring your kids. You can't have Omar. You
no,
can't go
hold on,
pick
hold
up
on.
Omar.
We're
Wait,
not there yet.
here.
We're not there. We're not
Okay,
there.
all right,
We're not
okay, okay,
there. The
okay. I
scene
was already thinking there.
this part of the scene was just the phone call. They hadn't.
Oh, just okay, yeah. Okay, all right.
We'll
Yep,
get
they just called. Yep, hold it in. I get what you're saying.
you'll get
I
to
was already
that.
there. I was already yeah. I was
So
already there. I was already
so we have Bubbles, Johnny, and the other dude getting high after, of course, they had negotiated the copper, and that was them trying to sell. Hold on, because I might have skip down. Because I might have skipped down here. Okay, no. Pause. Hold on that because I missed a couple scenes. So let's go back. Bubbles. Let's go back to the detail. So the detail they want Daniels to. The detail goes to Daniels about the case, and they want Daniels to go to Foster, who's the older guy who's a Colonel Foster, who's above Daniels, and about Ross, and Daniels, of course, is reluctant to go. Is reluctant to go in terms of fighting for the case initially.
Yep.
I know it was a quick, yeah. It was that was
Yeah.
quick
Yeah.
scene.
That like there's
That
gonna
set
like
that
we
set it
gotta
in
get to that
motion.
instinct. We
Yeah,
gotta get to that instinct.
yeah. That's setting in motion. Daniels fighting for the
Yep.
case. That's all that scene did. You have again. We talked about Bubbles and Johnny scamming off the copper. Now we have Avon, Stinkum, and Stringer going down to the pit.
In the pit.
In the pit to a music.
Come on now. There should be all types of light bulbs flashing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going.
No.
They're going. No. Yeah. They're going to. This is so Avon's walking with
Yep.
Stringer to
They all there.
musical interlude. So it's kind of they're playing music over this scene to show you. I guess to emphasize the fact that Avon is here. That's what that
It's
was
a big deal. Avon,
big,
the boss doesn't come down to the pit.
no.
It's a big deal.
So D'Angelo, he's going out to see D'Angelo. The only time that I've known that Avon, throughout the course of the show, that Avon was ever in the pit. And of course, he's going to speak to D'Angelo. And of course, you have Santangelo missing the entire thing on the rooftop, taking a piss instead of taking pictures. He misses everything that happened. They're long gone before he even sees that picks up the camera. So you had that part of it. You have Avon.
And even when he picks up the camera, he's about to have a smoke. So
Yeah,
he's not.
he was not even thinking about taking a piss. But he's like, yeah, taking a piss, take the piss, and then about to smoke a cigarette. To your point. So you have D'Angelo talking to Avon. Avon pays everybody that was a part of getting Brandon. Wallace gets paid. D'Angelo gets paid. He already paid Webe and Webe for doing muscling up. And D'Angelo, Stringer asked D'Angelo about the conversation earlier about catching a snitch and about earlier on in the season, about 2 episodes ago. And D'Angelo, of course, doesn't say anything about it. Basically says nothing has come up. And then you have, of course, them leaving out. D'Angelo, Avon is happy with D'Angelo as far as getting Brandon, and also he sees all the traffic and he sees why they're making so much money in the pit. He sees all the action and traffic, so he's pleased by that. And then he gives D'Angelo basically a data boy and basically says that if he keeps it going like this, we'll be talking about points on the package. In terms of him working for himself, similar to what he did with Stinkum in the previous episode. So a lot to chew on with this scene. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, the major piece of it is Santangelo missing the footage. Like that's what this scene is about. It's about the fact that if you're not, all the pieces matter, right? Like you you got to be all the way up on a case like this. There's no slipping because the people that you're going against aren't going to be slipping either. And if they do, you got to be there. You have to be there to catch them. And so the fact that and this is why I said like nobody from I don't blame anybody from the Barksdale crew for not being worried about the police department because the police department that they know at this point in time in that show are incapable of catching them in something as as complicated as what they were doing. Particularly the higher up you are, the cops weren't using the RICO stuff against drug dealers. That was against the mafia and things like that. So, anyways, point being, like they are very, very inept at their jobs at this point in time, and so the Santangelo piece just kind of like puts a punctuation that in and then missing the murder in this episode shows the idea of how much you need to be involved in something like this in order to bring in the case that they want to bring in. And that's a theme. This is a huge thing because that's a thing that plays over and over and over again in the entire series. Like this is not just a one-time drop. Oh, this is something that just happens in this season. Like, no, this is a huge thing. And spoiler alert, they never get it right. They just don't get it right. No. And for a variety of different reasons, and all the reasons are real, which is why people love this show as well. That anybody who works in anything can relate to all of the politics and the BS that goes into making decisions. But anyways, this is much less that and much more people not giving the level of attention and detail because they're not used to giving the level of attention and detail. And so sitting on a roof all day, taking pictures of somebody, being on the phone doesn't matter to you unless you're somebody who can see the whole picture or unless you understand that all the details matter.
Yeah, Santangelo, getting back to the epigraph of all the pieces matter, it felt like we hadn't seen Santangelo in like 2 or 3 episodes. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but that's what it felt like. So, if he takes those pictures, it clearly is a game breaker for the case. They have pictures of Avon Stringer in the pit, and that could
ties it all together.
Ties it all together. Yeah. Conspiracy and all types of stuff that they could tie all in.
I mean, it gives them a recent picture of Avon. That I mean, like that would be amazing in itself. It shows Avon and Stringer together in a known drug market. Like it doesn't convict them, but no. it puts a lot of running around to the side because they have the obvious evidence they will be able to show to a grand jury.
Yeah, so that was a big miss, to say the least.
Yeah.
In terms of missing those pictures. Bubbles trying to sell the stolen copper on 30 cents. He's stolen copper to a construction worker who knows he stole it. That's why he lowballed him with the offer of 30 cents a foot. He makes the deal. The Bubbles makes the deal reluctantly, and of course we continue to see the downslide and regression of one Bubbles during this episode, which we're continuing. I'm going to save I got some Bubbles material that I'm going to save for later on in the episode, in his final scene in this episode. Anything to add to that?
No.
All right. So you have Rawls and Daniels. Daniels goes to Ross, tries to convince him to change his mind about charging all the murders from the Deidre Crescent case, all in one. Daniels, of course, tells Ross that this will compromise the Barksdale investigation if he charges all these murders with not having a lot of evidence. Ross wants his stats. Ross also thinks that he can convict D'Angelo for this, that he can get D'Angelo for this. But Daniels tells him that we've already gotten him in the box twice and he's gotten out both times. So they go back and forth with that. Daniels makes one last plea to Ross. Ross, of course, refuses at that point and refuses to change his mind at that particular point. What were your thoughts?
This is kind of anybody's experience who's in middle management, low to middle management, trying to get your boss to do something that they don't necessarily want to do. There's a lot of common sense that already, like, in order to step in that meeting and to have anything to say, you have to be right. Like that's the entry into a meeting like that. There can't be anything on your side that is wrong. So you have to be in the right. So he knows he's in the right. That's not what this is about. This is about convincing his higher up, who's overalls, to do something that neither one of them, that nobody in there actually really wants to do. This is not popular. And what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name?
Burrell?
Burrell. Yeah, Burrell clearly states this. He's like, I'm no fan of this. I'm spending X amount of money on this.
This is not Burrell. Burrell's not in the scene. This is just Ross and Daniels.
Okay. See, I keep combining. I'm combining scenes today.
This is just Ross and Daniels.
Yeah. When he just goes in there. Yeah. So, then that's just the first part of that. Daniels goes in there to try to reason with him, but in order to be able to go in there, he knows he's correct in what he's going to say. So I'll leave that part at that.
You have Bubbles, Johnny, and the other guy getting high after they cashed in from the copper heist. And to me, with Bubbles, it was like somebody like first of all, I think a crackhead is a crackhead from that standpoint. Like he's still a crackhead at the end of the day. I think we saw him doing some good work early in the season with Kima and McNulty and how valuable he was in terms of knowing the street and the hat technique and all that. But at the end of the day, he's still a crackhead. And I think that Bubbles, his regression was that he had nothing to do as far as they hadn't given him any recent assignments in terms of, you need to look out for Avon, you need to look out for this person, that person. I think somebody like Bubbles, you had to keep, and rightfully so. They're not going to have. He's not a cop or what have you. He's a snitch, so they're gonna pull him on demand when they think they need him. So that's not even realistic for them to have consistent work for him. But it just goes to show you that it didn't take a lot for him to regress. Like when he, over the course of the first 6 episodes, when he was working with them, he was on the straight for the most part, or for him, or not going too heavy into the drugs. But once there was any separation from the cops and from Kima and from that, security blanket with McNulty, he immediately goes back into being, at this point in stage in the series, what he is, and that's a crackhead.
Yeah, like I said, I know that's the direction they want us to go in. I can't go there. It's sad when Bubbles backslides.
Yeah. No, it is definitely sad. Also, Johnny gets arrested, and Bubbles says, no luck for that boy, and again some more added pain for Bubbles. If you're Johnny, probably chill out. You had one good idea. You got your drugs. Just enjoy this, calm down. Don't. Johnny was trying to do too much. Johnny wants to go and think of another. He want to go back on the street. Just celebrate your win, get high, and keep it moving. Like Johnny at that point, he was trying. He had one good idea that worked out. Probably maybe his only one good idea in the whole series that worked out. Spoiler alert. he couldn't even enjoy that properly without screwing it up. But which told you about the character, which told you a lot. It continues to tell you a lot about Johnny and about just how fucked up his life is, and him being the lesser of the other two crackheads between him and Bubbles clearly. D'Angelo Wallace in the pit. D'Angelo tells Wallace why he demoted Cass and Sterling. There's a clear, of course, we talked about it earlier, he demoted them because they were stealing and stealing on the side. They were not snitching. Now that's I think the important distinction. Initially, Stringer thought that it was or was telling D'Angelo, me and your uncle think there's a snitch in your crew. There wasn't a snitch in his crew. They were just stealing vials and selling them on the side. And D'Angelo was that's all.
That's a big deal.
That's a big deal. That would have got them killed. That would have got them killed. That's a big deal. That might be almost as bad as the actual snitching. That's bad. They're stealing their own product.
And selling no blame.
D'Angelo saves them from the higher ups and demotes them. He confides in Wallace about this. Doesn't tell anybody else. But he told Bodie and Pooh. But he doesn't tell them why he demoted them. That's what I said. He told Wallace why he demoted him. He didn't tell anybody else why he demoted them. So you see this ongoing and developing relationship between Wallace and D'Angelo unfolding, right before your eyes. What do you think about that scene?
Yeah, this is a good scene, and it's a lot, and it's a lot of subtext in here, at least for me. D'Angelo and Wallace are connected in terms of how they perceive what is going on around them. D'Angelo just has a little bit more responsibility and is a little bit more connected to, not a little bit more, connected very closely to Avon and knows what's expected of him. Wallace is just a kid who's just out there. He's just a kid. That is just that simple. He's just a kid trying to survive. And so both of them have, I think I probably put it like empathetic souls. Like they feel other people's pain. That's basically the bottom line of empathy. Not necessarily the best trait to have in the game that they're in. No. But nonetheless, they both have it. Wallace is extremely upset by what he saw. And in the moment when Wallace is verbalizing how upset he was, this is in the beginning, D'Angelo, because he's out in the middle of the pit and everything, he can't show that type of empathy to Wallace in that moment. There's too many eyes on them at that point in time. And he honestly is feeling himself. He came out, he's looking good to himself. He has the girl he just came back from. So he's feeling himself. He's feeling the power and position and the privilege that being as highly connected as him is given. And so in that scene, the earlier scene where he's just like, yo, just get over it, just just forget about it. There's a lot that is in those words. The first part that's in those words is just like, yo, eyes are on you. homie, you can't show weakness out here.
Yes.
You just can't do it. So that's number one. Number two is, you know, like this is what you think was gonna happen. This is the life we in. It sucks. You just gotta bury it. Just don't think about it. You know, it's just probably more what he was trying to do in that moment because he was feeling himself and just like in terms of, you know, I'm the boss, I gotta give the harshest advice. That's number three in there. All those walls fall down in this scene. All those walls fall down. Because like I said, D'Angelo is an empathetic character. He can't he can't stay with that. He can't stay with that. He knows how things like that affect him and have affected him throughout the series. And so that conversation with Wallace was a mea culpa. Was him saying, I hear you, I understand you. Now let me explain to you why I'm not that asshole that was yelling at you in there. Because every other soldier fucks them up for stealing their stuff. Like that, there is literally no that is 101 of any criminal enterprise. You don't steal the merchandise. And if you do, it's heavy repercussions. That is, you know, base bottom line. Any of mafia, drug, whatever. That is base bottom line. You definitely don't repackage it and start selling it off as your own. That's a no-no. So yeah, they should be beat up at the very least, dead at the most. And what D'Angelo is saying is, I took care of it because I didn't want to see that type of violence. I don't like that type of violence. That's not me. That's not what I'm about. What you saw, what out there was not okay. That's not anything that I'm about. And so he was also trying to comfort Wallace. You know, like maybe there is a different way to play this game. Maybe I can show a more compassionate way of playing this game. A fool's errand, but that in that scene, that's what he's trying to do. Or that's part of what he's trying to do. I'm also being a little bit delusional as well. So yeah, that's it's a big one. It's a big one. It's one that I truly appreciate and enjoy. Because of the complexity of it, everybody that's involved in doing something like that is operating at a very high level.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big episode for D'Angelo. Like I said, we didn't mention it earlier, but he has a new girlfriend. He, like I said, he gets not promoted, but he gets gets congratulated gets the approval of Avon, which is, you know, important to him. And he keeps a couple of his underlings from being, from being taught, from being abused, or from being just beaten down by hiding information from the powers that be about the death. So a lot of things going on for D'Angelo in this episode. Episode that he.
Well, just really quickly, the expectation from the powers that be would have been that he handled it. That would have been the expectation. So that's part of that conversation. He's saying implicitly, I don't want to do things that way.
Right.
Because those are his people, those are his appointees. Avon and Stringer would have been like, you handle it. They're not sending Wee-Bey and Bird and everybody to handle that. So that's the big part of that. It's not just him saving them. It's him saying, I don't want to do it that way.
Yes. Moving on to Omar McNulty and McNulty's children. so McNulty takes a call from Omar earlier. He agrees to show Omar the body for his own reasons, but along the way, he has his kids with him. He takes his kids. He meets Omar at the morgue, takes his kids on a school night to the morgue with him. They're sitting in the lobby or whatever with a soccer ball, playing video games. a video game, and McNulty shows the body to Omar. Omar, of course, is just besides himself over seeing the body, seeing him that way. Again, the eye gouged out, and just knowing that they tortured him, tortured Brandon. He, yells to the top of his lungs. And at this point, he's just enraged. He's in he's completely enraged, and that's just what leads to him working. This leads to him working with the police. You wanted to say something about McNulty?
Well, I mean, it's just like, all right, so slow down. We don't even have to make this one that complicated. We don't even have to go into complicated emotions. This is parenting. This is responsibility 101. You do not bring your kids with you with with someone who robs drug dealers to the morgue to see their dead lover. Like, you just got, like, those all bad. No, bad. Bad decision making, Jimmy McNulty, in every step of that. I get what you're doing as a policeman, and all that is fine as a policeman. But your kids can't be with you while you're doing any of that. It doesn't matter. You either don't do it then, or you find a much safer, insaner place for your kids to be. So yeah. I know what that situation is supposed to invoke. He's all about the case, doesn't matter, everything like that. But just from a human being standpoint, not great choice. And then also, like, the later arguments that he has with his ex-wife, yeah, she wins.
She definitely
she wins. Not responsible. Not responsible. That's not a good idea. Don't do that.
Clearly was the better parent.
Yeah, so don't do that. Bad.
Understand why she won't let him see them even more than, we understand why he's only getting a certain amount of time to spend with his kid.
I mean, the reason why is because he cheated on her.
Well, that's the main reason why.
That's why the anger and the vitriol. But in terms of winning any parent argument of her questioning him about the bunk beds, like, do you have beds for them? He's like, of course I have beds. Like, no. You don't get to do no more of courses anymore, because it could easily be a question. McNulty, should you ever take the kids with you to the morgue to visit the dead body of a drug dealer, robber, in the middle of the night? Of course I wouldn't do that. Like, no, no more courses for him. Everything is on the table now. Everybody gets to ask every question of you. It's all fair game, because that was bad parenting.
No question about it. Daniels goes to Forrester to get help. Forrester, of course, is the Colonel Forrester. Colonel Forrester is above Daniels, but Forrester wants no part of trying to go tit for tat with Rawls. Forrester's like, I like my career. I'm not gonna help you. So excuse me. I'm not gonna help you. So this is the second time in the episode that Daniels has been rebuffed in terms of trying to save his case and trying to save his case and get another month in terms of being on the phone lines. That's going to be connected to a later scene with Daniels, Burrell, and Rawls as well. So, any thoughts on that?
No, just like you said, it's another scenario of Daniels trying to go and figure out a way in which to approach Rawls with some more ammo than just being right.
Omar, Kima, McNulty, they are down in the detail. Of course, Freeman and is listening as well. He's sitting over at his desk. Omar tells Kima that Bird killed Gant and that he would be willing to testify that seeing Bird killing Gant. He also, they also in this scene put together the fact that the the pages that were going out the previous night and make that connection to the murder of Omar's boyfriend. Freeman makes that connection. Freeman's listening to the conversation. Things connect in his head. He starts to look at some of the paperwork, and he pulls McNulty over to the side from the conversation with Omar, and they basically hash out the fact that that these pages were the murder when they when they made the calls and made the Stringer and the D'Angelo and to the Greeks and to that, and they know at that point that if they would have been on one of those phone lines, they would have had the murder if they would have had a wiretap in those phone lines in the pit. McNulty, of course, is gives Daniels an earful, saying that we're never where we're supposed to be. We were up on those phone lines. We would have had the entire murder. We would have had the murder from that standpoint. And he just lays the evidence out there on on Daniels' desk. Daniels doesn't say anything. McNulty walks out of the office. And of course, I mentioned earlier that Omar, the big piece is that Omar is lying about the fact that he saw Bird shoot Gant. Of course, we remember Gant being killed the first episode as the state's witness. What were your thoughts on the scene? A lot to chew on for this particular scene.
I mean, it's fairly straightforward. Like, this is one of the ones where I'm fine with McNulty because he was right on this one. He's absolutely right. If they're up on the wire, then they have that goes in the overall theme of the show in terms of always being late because of the nonsense. So that part, I mean, like, I think the best part of this scene, or for me, was just when Omar at the very end just goes, "Bad time for y'all." When McNulty storms out. We know how important even that. I mean, like, the Gant thing and all of that. I mean, like, we know it's going to continue to play a role for a little bit now. So basically, they have Omar willingly cooperating with them, which is bad for the Barksdale organization.
Yeah, a couple of things. Yeah, the fact that you have Omar willing to cooperate. Also, this is going back to what we spoke about earlier, that the Barksdale is going too far as far as how they tortured and killed Omar's boyfriend.
Yeah.
So Omar is a man of ethics and code, and he's crazy. He's a killer and what have you, and all those things. But he still believes in a code, and he still believes in there are ways to play this game. There are ways to do things. Him going to the police tells you that he believes that the Barksdales has completely violated any rules of this game. Because normally he would not go to the police. Like, he wouldn't be talking to the police like that. So that line to him has been crossed. So if they're crossing a line, then he's willing to cross a line to get retribution and revenge. And the second piece is the information that he gave out on Bird's gun, and telling them about Bird. Like, he's saying he's too dumb to toss it off. Yep. That's important, and that'll be discussed in further episodes. So those are the two parts to me that kind of stood out about that particular scene with Omar willing to basically violate his own code because he felt like the Barksdales have gone too far. Rawls, Burrell, and Daniels, they're in Burrell's office. Daniels again is trying to fight for his case. He knows that if they charge all the murders together, that's going to mess up his case. And Barksdale will change things up, and they probably will lose anyway in court. Rawls does not care. Rawls is willing to take the risk, willing to take that risk because he doesn't care about the Barksdale investigation. Burrell is concerned about the budget. He goes and saying, "I'm spending $2,000 over the budget with this wiretap." Of course, we know Burrell hasn't been a part hasn't been on board with this from the start. And basically Daniels, steps out of his comfort zone, says that this is bullshit. He says, and he was very convincing. I think this is the part that convinced them to change their mind, saying that if you're right, you have the case anyway. You have the case anyway. If you're wrong, then then this is going to blow up. This is going to completely blow up my case. Like he basically was telling Ross, you have nothing to lose on this because you can push back those charges, those murders, and still, basically clear your stats. He said, so he's basically telling him, I have everything to lose. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And they acquiesce. As we see, as the episode ends, they acquiesce to that decision, and he gets.
Yeah, don't skip to the end. There's too much to be said in the end.
Oh, no, we're not. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I'll since I started to early rate on this, I'll try a different tact on it. I'll break it down between the three of them. From Daniel's perspective, you got to remember the key scene that happened before was after the murder, or after they figure out that they had on the murder. McNulty walks into the office and lays the picture down and says, "That's on you." And then Daniels looks at the picture. So before, this was more of an intellectual exercise for him. Now this is starting to feel more personal in terms of lives are on the line here. That's how we're supposed to take that interaction bleeding in to this scene. There's more of a moral argument that's going to be behind his back. Ross does not give a shit about that. Ross hates Jimmy McNulty with every good reason to hate him and for Jimmy McNulty to hate him back. Ross does want to tear down this case because Jimmy went behind his back and got the judge to do what he wanted to do. So all Ross can see is vengeance, and just like it doesn't matter. I'll give any logic to put a stop to this because Jimmy's the worst. And Burrell just doesn't, like, none of this is anything that he wants at all. Like, any of this. He doesn't care about Ross' petty beef with Jimmy. He doesn't care about Daniels because Daniels has no political sway or anything like that. His case is costing him money. This is not a good look for him at all. And so, to your point, what Daniels does is he brings the rational argument into the situation. And this is the key part of it. He throws Rawls off by enraging him further, by letting both him and Burrell know it was McNulty that came in and told me that you were going to do this and that you were going to, and told me not to back off the case. So it was your guy in your department that is telling me to do that. So he stops Rawls right there because Rawls is so enraged. He's so enraged in that moment because he thought Jimmy was coming back home. Because remember, when Bunk asked McNulty, because way back in the beginning of the episode, McNulty's like, yeah, Rawls told me blah, 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 but I can't bring, this case is starting to take off. I can't be back in a week's time. No. Bunk goes, did you tell Rawls? And Jimmy says, no. So when Daniels hits him with that information, it's strategic because it's the first time he's ever hearing this. In Rawls's mind, Jimmy's coming back home. So that stops him right in his track. So not only does he bring the logical argument, as you pointed out, but he also expertly deals with Rawls. And he does all that because he is now back internally from a moral place. Because now he's seeing the consequences of the Barksdale's actions.
No question about it. It was well played. It was well played by by Daniels. Even his outbursts, it was like he had to show some type of emotion in terms of that he was willing to fight for this case and not just do the company line. So I think that he I think that he did everything he wanted to do, accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish in that particular scene, and was real smart and crafty about it. You have Santangelo and Rawls. At this point, Rawls is all out, all in on wanting to get Jimmy McNulty. He basically tells Santangelo, is he drinking? I want to know everything he's doing. I don't care. I don't care what it is. I want to know what about Jimmy McNulty. Santangelo, of course, is reluctant to say anything. Santangelo basically says, all he does is work. Like that. That's what Santangelo says. All he does is doing police work in the case. So at that point, Santangelo doesn't have anything on McNulty of consequence, and they leave that scene there. Any quick thoughts on that?
That just further shows how enraged Ross was at learning that piece of information.
So last scene, you have McNulty, Ross, Daniels, not Ross, McNulty and Daniels in the detail. Daniels tells them that the murder warrants were put on hold. McNulty looks a little bit surprised, and I thought important last words of the episode. Freeman asked, "Did it to Daniels? Did it cost you?" So I thought those were some very important last words, and to no response. Daniels just gives him a look, and the episode ends.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot to say. So anything you need to say, jump in right now.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. Okay. So, when we talked before the episode, I told you I had a lot to say on McNulty, and I had a lot to say about the beginning. I had a lot to say about the end. So there's a couple of points that I think I need to make before I launch into what I'm going to say. I think that up until this point in time, McNulty has shown himself to be willing to do anything for his case. I think before this episode, what that meant was he was willing to piss people off, which could be an admirable trait. You're willing to buck up against authority, buck up against the man, the system, whatever, for what you believe is right. I think in this episode, he jumped the shark. I think, but which is a good thing moving forward, because he becomes a much more emotionally rich and complex character, as we'll see in later seasons. He is the instrument of his own destruction, period. This thing that he loves about himself, only caring about cases, I am jumping a bit ahead, but not in any great detail, just in overarching philosophy of him. He says it himself. The thing that makes me good about working cases is the thing that makes me a horrible person, that makes me very bad at life. And so anyways, this episode really highlights that thing. Again, the kids, we joked around about it, but that was bad. That was really, really bad. That's not okay. It's not okay. That's because your case should never be more important than your kids. Period. In the story, there is no debate on that. There is no debate on that. That is a defect of character, what he's doing. He's using Omar's emotional attachment and very real pain and angst to bolster his case. That is a character defect. He does it because he wants to win and he knows he can do it, but that is a key character defect. The thing that I'm laying out, and when I saw this really and kind of got this for the first time, it entrenched in my mind that the Jimmy McNulty character is a manipulative mother effer. And so now I'll lay out what I saw differently than I had seen in the past. I had always viewed McNulty giving those files to Rawls as a mistake on Jimmy McNulty's part. And like I said, for most of the episode, I went right back to that place and I was enraged with McNulty. I'm like, this is your fault. At the end of the episode, you says he looks at Freeman. I didn't notice him looking at Freeman, but what I did notice more this time than ever was that he stops after he puts his jacket on. He looks at the picture of Brandon's body that McNulty had brought in there when he said, "This is on you," and he said those words specifically, and I remembered them this time. So I now submit to you that he brought those files into Rawls on purpose because he knew Rawls would take the case, and then he did that as a test for Daniels. He was testing Daniels. He was manipulating the situation in which Daniels would have to prove if he's willing to fight for it. And then he got more ammunition with Brandon's death and the photo that he could then get into Daniels. Now, I think the show wants us to see this, especially at this point in time, as a heroic trait of McNulty. Again, he's willing to do this to push the case forward. He's willing to outsmart his bosses. He's willing to outsmart his unit commander and everything like that. But there is a direct race dynamic in this that I cannot ignore. A white man and a black man, and one who's in charge and how he's undercutting him. If Chad were here, he'd probably go into a much more vitriol-based statement on this. So I won't go specifically there, but I will say that it's interesting how this is portrayed as a character, a positive character trait, and even in the language that we use, like with McNulty, like Daniels is willing to play along the game and play along. No. Everybody's doing their job. The only thing that paints them negative is in contrast to McNulty. McNulty's the one saying this person isn't doing that. This person isn't doing this. This person isn't doing that. But it is because he doesn't like their reaction to something. And then he's willing to manipulate you into a reaction that you want. I argue that's not a good character trait. And I argue that his perception is not the perception we need to view the prism of the show from. Like, he is not any more of a virtuous character than a Bubbles. He's absolutely as tragic as Bubbles, and he's absolutely as tragic as Bubbles' boy. The thing that makes him good is the thing that makes him horrible. like it's those two types of things. It's the same dynamic, which is why I said, like, there's no, like, looking at Bubbles and his boy is just crackhead. It's sad. The thing that makes them good people, or the ingenuity that they come about, goes to self-destructive things. Same thing with McNulty. The ingenuity that he has for these cases, the insight that he has for these cases, are bring about very bad circumstances for those around him, and are ultimately very self-destructive for him. And so just this again, it's I was thinking to myself as I was watching this show. I had a bunch of different thoughts. I was like, I gotta watch The Wire, because it was like I hadn't watched the episode and I had lost track of time. It was like very close to when the show was going to start. I was like, I gotta watch it. I'm like, and then as soon as it came on, I was like, and in the opening scene, I'm like, this is really good. I love watching this show. And then I was just having the thought, like, it's such a privilege. Like, all throughout the show, I'm like, it's a privilege to watch this show. It's that good. It's a privilege. Like, every time I sit down and come away from the show, I think in a different way that I thought before that. And that's a very rare thing in anything, particularly in a TV show. And so while I may sound very angry and agitated, I'm not. I'm actually very excited, because I love when I get to experience any piece of art, honestly, and come away with something different than the last time. And so this is very exciting for me, because, as you know, I analyze everything anyway. It's very exciting for me to come away from watching this episode from something very, very different than what I had previously held there. But that still doesn't change that the fact that the Jimmy McNulty character is very, very manipulative. And
Yeah, I mean,
very
he was
not a character trait. But what I'm saying is, yeah, he's manipulative in that scene. But again, I feel like we're doing like a separation of characters. Rawls is over here, he's a bad guy. Daniels is right in the middle, he's a company man. Jimmy McNulty fights against the system. Bubbles is a piece of crap unless he's like doing X, Y, and Z. And what I'm saying to you is no. Throw all of those archetypes out the window, because that's not what this show is about. And that's what this episode shows you, is that the people in this show are not good, bad, anything indifferent. They're very flawed for lack of one specific dynamic. Bubbles is just as flawed as Jimmy. Jimmy is just as flawed as Bubbles, and Bubbles and Jimmy are just as flawed as Homeboy, because they all make silly, dumb, stupid mistakes that a third-person observer would go, nope, you shouldn't do that, yet they do it, and they have their own reasons for doing it, and the same reasons that they do it are very self-destructive in character. I would actually argue all the characters are set up like this. There is no difference between Stringer Bell and D'Angelo Barksdale. There's no difference at all. They all set up their ultimate destruction. There's no difference between Avon to Stringer to D'Angelo and everything like that. Anyways, that's what makes this show so rich and so important. I will come back to those arguments later as we progress through seasons, because certain things aren't understood right now. But that Jimmy McNulty one, that's very understandable right now because it happened in this episode.
No, I mean, he was manipulating. He was manipulating people and situations and circumstances throughout the course of the episode. Like that's without question. Like he knows how Rawls is going.
No, he doesn't know anything. He knows Rawls is going to tank the case, but he doesn't know Daniel's reaction. That's the horrible part of it. That's the horrible part of it. Is when you manipulate somebody just to see how they'll react to a circumstance. That's the definition of manipulation, and that's ugly. That's not a positive characteristic.
And even with Omar, and I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about that scene in terms of, do you show? Do you show Omar, like, was it wrong for McNulty to show Omar the body? That's what I was going to ask you. I meant that. That's why I meant to put that on the list in terms of the questions I was going to ask you. Do you think it was wrong for him?
With his kids there, absolutely.
No, forget the kids. Forget the kids.
Can't forget the kids. Those two together. You can't forget the kids. That's what makes it such an ugly, ugly scenario. He was going to do it anyway, and he was going to do it, be his kids there, be damned or not. Just as a procedural part of police work, yes, you show the body. Should McNulty have done it? No, because it wasn't his case. Like the people who are working the case call the next of kin. Now, they never would have been able to identify Omar. So the two complement each other. I'm not saying anything is black and white in this show. Absolutely not. Those policemen would have never, ever, 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 ever been able to identify Omar as somebody that was connected to Brandon and somebody that cared for Brandon. Never would have been able to make that connection. So Omar, who knows how long it would have been until he found out. Not very long, because he has his ears to the street. But McNulty did not show Omar the body out of caring for Omar and Omar knowing the friend. He showed him the body because he knew he would get an emotional reaction out of Omar, and that could potentially help his case. Omar could have still said, F you, Jimmy, I'm out of here. So that's what I'm saying. That's ugly. That manipulation is ugly for that exact thing. You set somebody off in a bad space, not even knowing their reaction. So Should he have? It's consistent with his character that he would do it. It's
What?
consistent with his character. It is consistent with having somebody identify a body is at a family member, somebody close to the victim is absolutely part of the process and absolutely natural. Nothing wrong in that. It just made it extra ugly. He was the one who did it and how he did it.
Yeah, I like even watching this episode, just learning new things that you hadn't seen through the first, say, 100 times you've seen an episode. It is remarkable, and it is the epitome of the highest level of art. Like, you can look at a picture, you can go to a museum, look at a picture, you might get a different viewing of it each time you see it. If it's that level of art, we're talking about like a Michelangelo or Vincent Van Gogh, somebody like that. So that's the brilliance of this show. That it's something new every time you watch the episode. I can watch the episode again today and find something new and different about it, about the episode. What were your thoughts on the final words when Freeman said, "Ask Daniels, ask him, it cost you. Did it cost you?"
Yeah, that changed for me as well, because usually, or in seasons that are coming, when they talk about what it costs you, it's usually about a political something. You gave up something political. You gave up, you have a favor that you are, or you gave up a higher rank, or you gave up, or you've been busted down low somewhere. So I always thought that's what Freeman was talking about when I looked at that scene, and I always thought that maybe there was something else that he gave up to Rawls and Burrell. I'm still not certain that's not the case. I'll be looking through these next episodes very closely to see if there's something that was unsaid that happened. I had just assumed that. Now, though, especially noticing him looking at that picture at the very end, I definitely don't think Freeman meant it this way. But what he lost was the ability to what he lost was the ability to just it be a case. It just be something that he does. That's the loss in this. Like, looking at that picture, it's like it's juxtaposed the reaction of Wallace. That's the Daniels reaction of Wallace. Wallace was horrified by what he saw, and it will change him forever, change him as a character. Daniels was horrified by that picture, and it has now changed him as a character. He will now not be able, as his now wife keeps trying to consult him on, just keep it as a job, just keep it as a way to boost your career, to get into this and that. He won't be able to do now on, and that's the very beginning of it. That's how I took that this time.
And for the audience, you can put a bookmark next to that, and like there's a reason why those scenes there's a reason why the Wallace scene was the opening scene, the Daniel scene was the ending scene. That's not those two characters were supposed to begin and end this episode. There's a reason why for there's an exact reason why that was the case. Because seeing the branding picture, like you said, seeing the branding picture for Daniels and seeing the Brandon dead body for Wallace, you can bookmark that. You can bookmark those two scenes, that beginning and that ending, for a reason. Who's your MVP? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, my connection is unstable. I was about to. It's being very weird.
Who
Repeat that last one.
who was your MVP of the episode?
So I'm going to go with. Oh wow, this is a good one. I've been so annoyed with McNulty this entire episode. I'm going to go. You know what? I'm gonna go McNulty's my MVP.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that because uh I was so emotionally involved in all of his actions throughout the episode, um, which is not always the case for me. Uh, I'm gonna give him the MVP because of that aspect. Um, just in terms of inside the show, though, I'm giving D'Angelo the MVP. I
Oh, wow.
loved, loved his conversation with Wallace. Um, and you know, we'll talk about it in further episodes. I believe he tried to save Wallace, and this was one of those ways in which he tried to push him away from this life. Um, Again, we'll talk about it a little bit more. But yeah, that's that. If in the infamous words of Kevin Durant, that's the real MVP, D'Angelo. Um,
I
yeah,
had I had Daniels. Um, I thought that he
that's a good.
kept fighting for the case. He goes to Ross, he goes to Foster, then he goes to Burrell, and he goes against his better judgment initially, and he goes against who his character has been up until this point. Like you said earlier, this was a shift was a shift in character moving forward for Daniels. So the Daniels you see now was further changed for the better part of the series. Like this is now this was the this was that showing him that picture when he sees that picture and when he starts to see the paperwork and all the pieces that are surrounding this case and the type of work that's going to be necessary to do this case. I think that that there's definitely a change a shift for him in future episodes. And again, I liked how he kept fighting for the case. He kept fighting for the case even after being told no repeatedly. Stood up to Rawls, which is not easy. You saw Foster, a white colonel is scared to death of Rawls. Um, he stood up to Rawls, even though he's ranked out, even though ranked Rawls outranked him and what have you. And even though he had to know in the back of his mind that this might cost him a promotion and might cost him, him being able to climb that ladder up until this point. So I had him as the MVP, but I definitely the D'Angelo conversations were great throughout the course of the episode. Even the conversation we didn't talk about it, even the conversation he had with the girl, basically saying they ain't shit for free. Like, he was in the apartment with the girl and he's describing his baby mama, saying that yeah, she want the credit card and she want this and she want that. And he says, when it comes to sex, or it comes to, he said the P word, ain't shit for free. And I mean, you really hear, his conversations throughout the course of the episode were just raw great. All his dialogue and his scenes were great throughout the course of the episode. I didn't even think about him initially for MVP, but I can understand why he would be a candidate, why you would have him as the MVP, because again, we thought D'Angelo at the beginning of this as kind of like in over his head and so on and so on, but he shows you parts of, he gives you parts of where he does know what's going on. He is smart. He is keen to the street, but just doesn't have that soldier in him to go all the way, which we'll see later on. But yeah, I had Daniels, but I definitely understand the D'Angelo selection. I think we flushed out everything in terms of that episode. I think we expunged and twisted the episode to its core. Went to that, twisted all out flushed out all the details and what have you of that episode. As always, thanks to Robert Sapp for joining me
Mr. Quinn,
on this
be
program.
healthy, be safe.
Be safe, be safe out there, enjoy the Jordan documentary. Now, of course, thanks to Robert Sapp for joining the episode. That, of course, will wrap it up for this edition of the Real Deal podcast, The Wire Remix, episode 6, The Wire. I will see you next time. We're gonna do a podcast on a Bulls classic coming up later in the week. And of course, we'll have the documentary breakdown with Chad Quinn and Rob Sapp later on as well. I'm out.